Hello everyone, my name is James Coleman and I'm the Maxwell Render Mentor at the University of Brighton Centre for Design Technology. The Centre for Design Technology staff and students provide courses, equipment, consultancy and research in product design at the University of Brighton. Hello everyone, and today I'd like to have a look at camera resolution inside Maxwell Studio. Along with time and SL, camera resolution is one of the fundamental settings to get right. If your camera resolution is too low, then images can look pixelated when they're displayed or printed. And if it's too high, then you're going to waste your time when rendering the image itself. Now, to actually start off today, I need to add a camera into Maxwell Studio. There's many ways of doing this. You can either go camera, new camera. The shortcut is on Mac it's Shift Command C, on PC I think it's Shift Control C, or my preferred way is just to right click in the cameras window and new camera. So this has made our camera here, and if I use the scroll wheel to zoom out slightly in the viewport and then Alt and left click to orbit around, you can see that it's given us this preview of the camera here in the viewport. And if I double click this camera, I will have it selected and I'll be looking through it. And let's say I have a different camera, but to go back to the perspective mode, I'll go up here in the viewport to where it says camera and then select perspective, and it goes back to where I was before. And let's make a new camera. Let's go to the camera menu this time, and again it will put it wherever you're currently looking in the viewport is where your camera will go to. And you'll notice the different preview here. They both go to the green y-axis, and that's because they are actually currently focused to the green y-axis. More on that in later videos. Now at the moment I'm in the perspective viewport, as you can see here, and as I'm moving around with Alt and left click, orbiting around the scene, I am not changing any of the cameras. But if I had one of the cameras selected, again by double clicking them and then I move around, I am actually moving the camera this time. And if I were to go back to the perspective mode, my camera has moved basically, but you can see it's still focused on the same point. To actually go to and use one of the cameras, the fastest way is double click on the camera you want to use, or you can right click on the, select the camera, right click on it and make active. That's the other way. Or the third way is to go to this menu here and you'll have a list of all of your cameras. The advantage of having lots of different cameras in the scene is that you can set up more than one view and re-render it if you like. Go back to the scene later on and re-render it if necessary. What I'm going to do now is open up from my library, open up the Cornell box. So it's File, Library, Scenes, Cornell V2. I want to open it. No, I'm not going to worry about saving my changes. And this is the camera which comes with the scene, and if I enable the interactive preview, so now I've got the interactive preview working below my viewport. And to make things a little bit more interesting, I'm going to import or an object. I'm going to import a not primitive, just to spice things up a bit so it's not quite so blank. Select the knot in the object manager, and then object parameters, scale it down 0.3, and then in position position Y 0.25 is what I'll need it to be in the middle of the scene. Right, so now we're actually looking at something. I'm not going to worry about applying any material to it, it won't need it. But now what I'm going to do is select the cameras, select the camera in the cameras manager. The camera is currently called no name. If I wanted to rename it, just right click, rename, and then call it whatever you like. I tend not to name my cameras, I usually only work with one anyway. But if you want to rename your cameras, that's where to do it. And then in camera parameters is where you will find the resolution, and it's actually under sensor in here. Now these presets are click on preset and it will show different manufacturers and different models of camera. However, these don't actually apply to the resolution, it is simply the film back. So don't think that just you can use one of those and instantly you're okay. It will only affect the film back, and let's pick a nice popular one, Canon EOS 5D Mark II. My resolution is still the same, but my film back has changed from 36 and 36 to 36 and 24 millimeters. That's literally changed the film back to 36/24. If I want to change it back to what it was before, I can unlock the aspect ratio, and then put 36 in the other side, and then lock the aspect ratio again. Okay, so that's now the basically covering the. Don't worry about the preset. What you need to worry about is this resolution here. At the moment it's 256 by 256. That's very, very small. If I were to do a quick render of that, just to see how small it is. That's it. It's not very big at all. And so that's not actually going to be any of use to you when you're rendering an image. So basically, whenever you're rendering, you need to know what media you're going to be showing this image on. If it's going to be screen or if it's going to be print. Now, if it's on screen, say you're giving a presentation with a projector, or you're going to email an image to someone, then you can use a lower resolution because it's just going to be viewed on a desktop or a laptop, whatever, on a computer screen. However, if you're going to print it, then things get a little bit more complicated, but also a little bit easier in that you don't really need to pick and choose. It's just literally a case of working out your exact DPI. Now I'm going to cover desktop resolution first, and for me at the moment I'm working with a full HD display, 1920 by 1080. So what I'm going to do is, on resolution on one side, keep the aspect ratio locked, because, you know, why not, put 1920 and then enter, and then unlock the aspect ratio and then put 1080 on the other side, and you'll see it'll zoom in a little bit. I'm just going to engage fire again. It'll zoom in a little bit. Don't worry about that. That's just because of the aspect ratio has changed. It's still technically the same view, but it's sort of cropped out the top, if you like. And then render that. It might give you a warning, say yes, I know I'm going to overwrite the file. And it'll take a little longer because it's a larger image size now. But there we go. And that is the image at proper resolution, and if I press F on my keyboard to go full screen, there is the full image, if you like, at 1920 by 1080 resolution. And so I could render this to my desired sampling level with this scene probably between 14 and 16, and then email it off to whoever my client was at the time. Press F to go back to windowed view, if you like, and then just come out of Maxwell. Now, if you don't click, if you don't click stop, then it will just say, by the way, it's working. Are you sure you want to quit? Yeah, I want to quit. Now, there's not really any sort of default values to use for resolution if it's on screen. It's really just go with your gut. I mean, the lowest I would really go would probably be, I mean, the other kind of typical values would be 1280 by 720. Well, it's locked already because that's, again, that's full HD. Well, it's not full HD, but it's HD resolution, 720. 640 by 360 is another popular one, but that's really kind of, that's getting down the lower end of the scale. It's still a common value, and of course you don't have to stick to you know, the 16 by 9 ratio. You can do whatever you like, but bear in mind that the lower you go, it's going to take less time, but it's also going to be a smaller image for your client to view. And, you know, if they view it larger than it's meant to be viewed, then they're going to say, why is it so pixelated? One note on pixelation that I often get asked, I'll just go to perspective mode, right click, center scene. I often get asked about why does my image look so low resolution when actually it's not. What they really mean is the target distance is wrong and their focus is wrong. Let me show you something. Let's go to 0.1 on the target distance, engage fire, and turn my resolution up. and just render that. And I'll let this render for a little bit. And what this is to show is that this image is proper, or it's not proper resolution, it's accurate resolution, it's the resolution that I wanted, but it is a blurry image. Don't think that that's due to your resolution. Image resolution is kind of, it's a set value. You can't really get it wrong unless you accidentally use the wrong one. Maxwell can't get it wrong, it can't mess it up. But people often come to me with images like this and they say, my resolution is wrong, it looks blurry or pixelated. It's not pixelated, but it is blurry, and that's because your focal length is wrong. I will cover that again more in detail later on. Now, for print resolution, let's say you don't want this image, or you don't need to email this image to anyone, and you want to print it out. That's a little bit different, because you can literally work out the exact resolution that you will need for A3 or A4 paper, or any size of paper, as long as you know the dimensions in millimeters or inches, and you know the DPI that you need to reach, or the DPI that you need to achieve rather. And I've done lots and lots of tests in the past, I'll show you some of those today. And so I'd like to think that I'm familiar with which DPI is suitable. It is always going to be subjective and opinionated and blah blah blah. And yes, each image is going to be unique, but I think on the whole you can say with certainty that you can use a 300 DPI for your images if you're viewing it from this distance or whatever. Now, a note on DPI: some printers can go up to 600 DPI if you're using some fancy laser jet or whatever. But to me, the human eye cannot actually see that high resolution, to be honest. I know some printers go up to 1000 DPI, but it's a bit pointless for our purposes of just showing an image. There are some cases where 1000 DPI is necessary, but it's not with us. To me, 300 DPI is the highest you'd ever need to go, to be honest, in my experience. Anyway, so calculating the resolution for images is not kind of a Maxwell specific thing. It's for all render engines, and in Maxwell all we do is we just put this number into the camera sensor resolution box, if you like. And on your screen now should be some values for that kind of as an example. And what's an extra complication when considering these values is the required DPI. Now, these values are for 300 DPI, but if you're viewing an image from, say, a distance of more than a meter, between 1 and 3 meters approximately, again subjective, every image is individual, then you can go down, in my opinion, to 150 DPI with ease. And I have done a test print, which again should be on your screen now. And this test print showed me and others in my class that actually, from a distance of over a meter, you can get away with 150 DPI with ease. And the extra complication on top of that is that this also changed the sampling level required in order to make the image appear clean. And again, this is what this test print was designed to do. All it is exactly the same scene, but rendered to different SLs and with different DPIs, and then printed out on a certain type of paper. We used photo paper, which again, if you're using photo paper, because of the high quality of the paper, the high quality of the print, the printer used, then again it can change your results. And for example, with this test we did, we found that 150 DPI was fine. The image didn't look pixelated at all from the viewing distance. It didn't look different to 300 DPI, which obviously saves time when rendering, but it required SL18, and that's, I've never gone that high with a print resolution image before we did this test, because I didn't realise it would be necessary. Because my previous test, it like it wasn't necessary. So there is that extra complication as well, you know, another complication to add to our woes. But bear in mind that all of these factors will change the resolution and sampling level required to make your image look clean. In this example, which was one that I carried out at home and also just at university with an ordinary A3 printer, was a different test but a similar sort of setup. The same model rendered to different SLs, and I found with this that I couldn't tell the difference at home or at university between SL12 and SL14, and that showed me that I didn't need to go up to SL14 and that SL12 would be fine for all of my purposes. So when printing at home or normal printing, I would recommend SL12 and whatever resolution would be required. For sizes of dimensions, I would recommend above A3, so with a viewing distance of over a meter, then go to 150 dpi, but for A3 and under, it really will need 300 dpi most likely. We did experiment with DPIs in the middle, like 250 and 200, but it's just a kind of waste of time, really. Stick with multiples of, or divisions of 300. It's probably going to be the most use to you in the industry. So finally, to recap, if you're using desktop resolution, then just use either what you're going to be displayed at. You know, if you're doing a presentation on a projector, still today the vast majority of projectors still use 1280 by 1024. If you're doing it on an HD telly, for example, then use 1920 by 1080. If you can email it, maybe go lower to save image size, but to be honest, emailers nowadays should be able to send an image of a couple of meg. It just depends on the receivee if they want an image that big, or if they're a bit unfamiliar with big images. Anyway, but then with print resolution images, you will need to go up to the correct resolution. Just work it out, either online or in your own head or whatever. But here are a range of values which, you know, should be enough at least to get you started. One thing to bear in mind about print resolution images is that they do use a lot of RAM because of the image resolution itself. That's what partly governs the RAM usage inside any render engine. So bear in mind it will use more RAM. However, I've never ever gone above I think 2 or 3 gig of RAM, even for like an A1 image. So don't worry too much. Nowadays you should have 2 or 3 gig of RAM at your disposal, he says. One final thing which I often get asked, or I thought of myself a few years ago, was what if I render at a high enough resolution that's suitable for print, but not necessarily desktop resolution? The kind of thing that you would do for images which you don't think, or you won't immediately need to print, but you may need to print in the future, say for a portfolio. But I actually found that it wasn't worth it. Basically, don't bother doing that sort of thing. The images don't turn out the best quality because of the fact that you do them to a lower SL, and so when you show them on screen, they're not as good. And then when they are printed, you know, you can't do it. Basically, don't bother doing it. Another thing that people ask is it worth, say, doubling the resolution of an image and then viewing it at your actual desired resolution as a way of getting past the noise and sort of reducing the noise, so that basically 4 rendered pixels turn into 1 normal pixel. Say rendering an image at 2480 by 2048 and then showing it on a 1280 by 1024 display. Again, don't bother with it. It's not worth it. So that's it for today. Hope I haven't waffled too much. See you later. For more information about Maxwell Render training at the University of Brighton Centre for Design Technology, email maxwellrenderbrightoncdt@gmail.com.